It's the week of sectors. It's the week after the force throw ban. A lot of PQ results to talk about, a new forming meta in Star Wars Unlimited, and a lot of strategy decisions to make because of it. Tonight, we're going to talk about the PQs from this past week, break down the metas, crunch the data as much as we can, and then we're going to make our predictions for sectors coming this weekend in Portland, talk about how to get prepared, what you should expect. We're going to pull up some deck lists of all the leaders that we think are going to be the most relevant. We're going to do our best to try to get you prepared as we get one of our teammates prepared, Sharkey, who is right here with me. I'm Jordan from the Colorado Cantina Crew with Sharkey and also Kyle. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, doing well. As you mentioned, Sharky's going to Portland. I'm just jealous. I wish I was going, but looking forward to Philadelphia the week after.
Yeah, alas, we'll be here, maybe doing some commentary with late night. Maybe we'll get some reps in. Maybe we'll see Sharkey on stream if we're lucky. We'll see how it all goes. But yeah, a lot to talk about, right? I mean, it always with this game, it always seems like we get these major shakeups before major tournaments, which makes for some exciting and frantic preparation and some good gameplay, hopefully. So like I said, we're going to talk about a lot of the results from this past week. We'll talk about the predictions and prep work that Sharky's doing and we think that you should be doing as well. Hit on some decks that we have been working on too. So yeah, I mean, this weekend Kyle and I actually got the chance to commentate a little bit on late night's Wisconsin stream, so we'll talk about that. Actually appreciate Kyle jumping in. Like I was going to be commentating alone for an hour or two, and Kyle saved the day, so appreciate that. Had some fun doing that, and because of that we saw some great gameplay, right? And with a lot of decks that we'll be talking about, deck list probably from players there from across the area as well. But yeah, let's just hop right over to friend of the program. I don't know what would we do without Smooth Base at this point. It's kind of unbelievable, but we have all the data sorted by post force throw ban right now, right? So this is all just data from this past weekend. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can get it. And interestingly enough, right, like we always talk about the top eights here more than winning and an overall play rate, but I gotta lead off, man. I can't bear the lead. I was really surprised to see Boba as the most popular deck of the weekend.
Yeah, I totally agree. I didn't think it would be as popular as it was. Even if I had predicted that it would be that popular, I would have predicted an even lower conversion rate. And yet it still had some top 8 conversions, which was a little surprising to me. I think that's going to trend down. You and I were talking a little bit about this beforehand. You always like to look at the overall play rate. I go straight to the top 8 where you can see that Boba's a little lower there, but not absent. And so I guess it's still here to stay. I think we've said before, it's not my cup of tea, but it's around. And I'll predict it's going to go down some more. But
we've been predicting that for the past 3 months, like nonstop, since the first time we saw the deck, right? It's Bueller.
It's like our tagline this time, right?
It is, right?
Yeah, but we were expecting a reversion to the Minneapolis meta, and we saw some of that. We're going to get into it. We saw
signs, for sure.
There are some decks that are really bad for Boba in that meta, like Ray. Yeah. Right? Ray had a little bit of a showing. I think that's going to go up, and that just crushes Boba. So I think we'll continue to see it get pushed out, but we'll see.
Sure. And I guess, when you finish things up, you get comfortable. That could be another reason why we see Sabine and Cad Bane go up in play rate. It's a deck that's been around. People understand there's not that much sleuthing to do, they're established things. But yeah, just to be clear, I think looking at the overall play rate as it compares to conversion and then champion really gives you a full picture of what's going on. Yeah, I want top 8 stuff more. I weight that more in my head, but I want to see the development, right? I want to see like what the popular deck is going to be, because a lot of the counterplay in these situations are, hey, what beats the deck? What am I going to get the easy wins at? How do I program that? Okay, so
real quick, one of the things I'm going to talk about real quick is on this one, because you can see it on this screen. And before we switch to top 8, I will admit to being completely wrong about Darth Vader. Go ahead and hover over and look at his conversion rate.
So we have a
conversion rate
of 5.7% total.
Yeah, I expected his conversion rate to be in the Boba range and Boba to be in the Darth Vader range.
Where is it? I don't even see it.
2.9%. That's it.
Yeah, so pretty poor, right?
Practically absent. I expected that to be a reversal, but I am calling myself out on that one. I got that way wrong.
Yeah, I can't even. It's so narrow. The sliver is so narrow that I can't even see it here, right? One thing I will say about Narrow and Slivers is that I do wish this week had a wider data set, right? The biggest PQs from this past weekend. Wisconsin was a big one that we had the pleasure of casting, we mentioned, but like a lot of them were sealed. Right. A lot of them were limited PQs. So I was hungry for a little bit of a larger sample size. So we'll have to interpret the best we can. But yeah, I mean, another thing outside of the Boba stuff, just from an overall play rate perspective, that did surprise me was that CAD really, was the third most popular deck of the weekend, right? Which is not a position that CAD usually is in, Sharkey.
Yeah, it's a little weird, not gonna lie. It was the one drop version has been becoming more and more popular every week, it seems, because it does have a pretty good matchup into a lot of what was at the top. I think it still sticks around. I don't know that it stays up at we're past 7% now representation, which is a little high for me. I'm not really sure if I know what to do with my deck being that high represented, but
does that make you like it less because it's so cool now? No, I'm just kidding.
No, actually, I'm pretty big fan of my version of it because my version eats the popular one, actually.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, let's head over to the top 8 stuff. Not unsurprisingly, just from a leader perspective, all the talk last week was about Han1. In our video last week, we broke down 6 decks. It's in our playlist. If you haven't seen it, check it out. 2 of the decks we spoke about were Han builds, and we footnoted by saying Han1 Green is really heavy on our minds, but we decided to have some fun working on these first. Kyle, we see 14 top 8s from Han Solo. Just in general, as we swap it down to leader and bases, we see what was it? 6 from Han1 Green. Just 30.
Han1 Green 30.
Yep. 5 from Han Solo 1 Blue. And then I believe it was 3 from Han 1 Data Vault, right? So really a large amount of the field, and we'll talk about the other Hans. Hans everywhere, but which one of those surprised you the most? What about the Han Blue and Green thing is the surprising anecdote from the weekend?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, Han obviously being the big winner. I guess the first anecdote I would give, though, from a winner perspective, is that Han's the big winner, but not the one you think. Han2 Blue.
Well, wait. We'll talk about that in a second. We're talking about the Han 1 stuff first, and then we'll go.
No, I get you, but I think it's important to say, we're focusing it on the Han 1s.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's important to say that it didn't win the most. Han 2 did, which was a little surprising to me. We were predicting a lot of Han 1. In the Han 1 sphere, I think we agree Green is the best of the 3. There are 4 variants, I suppose. Green is the best overall. It is a little surprising to see Data Vault. For me, with Han 1 Green anyway, I'm really looking for that ramp. I get the most explosive wins, the free wins, if I can ramp early. And if I'm going with Data Vault, I'm diluting my chance of that happening.
Sure.
Right. And I'm not necessarily that interested in the 33 HP to go for a race. I suppose maybe if you're going for more of a grindy strategy and you want to be able to kind of grind longer and you want to have more home one, more Keller and that sort of thing, go wide, go longer. If you were expecting more of a control meta, perhaps that makes sense. But in a general perspective, I prefer the 30, right? I want to try to get that ramp on turn 2. I'm even going to dig with it with, dig for it with R2, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So part of the reason why I wanted to talk about Han 1 first, even though, like Kyle mentioned, Han 2 had more raw wins from a top 8 perspective, Han 1 did have that area. What really drew me to it was that it was in blue and green. And not only that, Kyle, it was in blue and green at different bases, right? And I'm with you on the 30, or maybe partially because I have the Twin Suns nice echo base that we want to use. That's probably what you are too, realistically. Oh, yeah. Yep. But like these guys who made top 8s with Data Vault, they're not wrong. Obviously, very strong players, very strong, experience on the weekend. And I think when you get a leader like that is so flexible in different areas in this first week, that really draws my attention. That really raises eyebrows to see, like, is this going to continue? Is it going to be, which color are we going to see it grow? Is red going to be there? I do agree that I think that green is the best, but blue really has some legs too, right? And I think that we'll talk about a deck list later in the episode as we get towards the prep portion from Carlos from Late Night, but just great stuff overall. And like you mentioned, also with Han2 Blue.
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess I was just trying to differentiate the strategy between Data Vault Green and 30 Green. Why would you pick Data Vault, right? I guess if you're trying to race, you want the extra damage, or if you're trying to grind with more cards in your deck. But in general, to your point, I agree with the green. What are you targeting with blue, though? Right? In my view, if these are paired against each other, green dominates blue head to head.
Yeah.
But if you're going to bring blue, what are you targeting? What deck are you trying to beat with blue rather than what you're doing with green?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. These are all a lot assumption based, right? Because we could also, one of the great features here at SWOBase, free site, by the way, swobase.com. You could go into matchups, right? And then click to see and compare how things are going. At this point, we're talking about very, very small sample sizes, right? Like we're talking about 22 games, 10 games, 5 games. You don't want to read too much into it, right? But I think some of my assumptions would say that I think that the blue yellow deck might have a better chance against like some of these Data Vault Ray variants where you could really start getting those turned on Anakins and taking out 2 units at a time, really getting ahead of action sheet wise. Like, again, just assumptions. Maybe that's wrong. I think versus control, green has the leg up. I think probably versus like the CAD decks, like the general Tarkentown decks, which is just CAD at this point. I would say that's a toss up. Sharky, what do you think?
I think Han1 Blue is actually tougher for Cad Bane, partially just because Han actually has options on 6 when you derail the 5, 6, 7.
That is something I do like about that build as compared to others.
Yeah, and I always caveat the statement I'm about to make with, as long as it's in the non-Alex the greatest category, but I feel pretty dang good into Han Green with Cad.
Sure.
So, like, generally that matchup feels pretty good. Cad has a lot of tools to disrupt and beat Han at, if you run out of cards and you run out of gas. And at that point, Cad takes over. Blue, on the other hand, Anakin's a pain. You flip Han, you stop Han, you get Anakin, you're like, well, okay, that's kind of a no-play turn. Like, it can get a little bit harder to push past the Han turn point. So Cad Bane specifically, I think, has more trouble with Han2 Blue, but I don't know that... I don't know. The one drop version might be a little different, mostly just because they're in a race in the first place. But Han, in general, is good at ramping. You may have noticed.
Yeah.
So he can also get out there and control the board pretty quickly too. I think he's got to even actually. The more I think about it, the more I think the blue version probably has a better matchup into the ones than he does in the mid range.
Yeah, I asked the question because I was curious to hear what you guys said. In my view, I think you're targeting aggro with the blue version a little more. With the green version, you get into an aggro matchup, you're racing. Most likely, right? You're not trying to defend. With the blue version, we casted a few games, Jordan, and with the blue version, we saw you have defense, right? You have a lot of heal. You have Yoda, you have Yaddle, you have Chirrut, you have Itinerant Warrior, right? So you can really defend and heal and then try to win the game that way. In fact, I think in the top 4, that's exactly what we saw was Han1 Blue versus Sabine. And that's what happened. It turned into kind of the healing allowed the Han Blue player to, prevail, plus the Chirrut, the defense, that sort of thing. The number one allure of the blue deck, though, of course, is the easy turned on Anakin, which you had mentioned there.
Yeah, it's the new fresh hotness. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like that. I think that I don't think we could understate that in our conversation. It doesn't apply from the competitive strategy perspective, but I think that's probably why people are motivated to play it as well. But yeah, I think another argument you can make for Han1 Green Data Vault is just like there's a lot of really good cards. Right, like potentially you could be running more 7s, you could be running more ships, more pilots. I think it just could give you some flexibility. You could be running Marauder, Kyle. Like a lot of people aren't running that in their builds. Like I think they did, again, just playing devil's advocate, but I think that would be the perspective.
Yeah, probably just a little less consistency with that strategy, but you're right. Just more beef of a deck, able to go longer, right? If you're going to lose the consistency of ramp, you're probably adding additional options, Spark of Hope, Marauder, that sort of thing, maybe to give you more options or more opportunities to get it with a larger deck.
Yeah, and just a little teaser for later. I actually might be starting to play one of my first Data Vault decks ever. Oh my God, stay tuned after the rest of the podcast. We'll talk about
Gross. I'm going to predict Iden. That sounds like the sort of thing you'd do.
Yeah. All right. So next topic overall, Iden aside, is I think we should talk about Sabine because that's fun. That's energetic. Really standard Sabine list. There was one that we saw with an Ayla pop up, but is Sabine back again? And when I looked into it, though, I was again surprised to see how well she did. and maybe this is me, maybe this is my like built-in bias and fear, imposter syndrome, all those things, but it did look like Sabine had a shit matchup into all the people that you would expect her to. And I think that has to do with some luck, you know, getting through the matchups that you need to be. But if we pull up the matchup analysis here, in this past week, right? Like it's not like all of a sudden things have changed, right? Like she had a losing record here in Boba, 17-21. Again, small sample size. Even smaller sample size, 5-7 into Cad Bane. 9-14 into Han Solo, 1 overall. I'll split that into leader and base so we get a little bit of a different look at it. She was 6-3 into Han. That's Han2 Blue, which is actually kind of interesting to see, right? And then 2-1 into Han Solo 30, and then she must have lost quite a bit to the Data Vault version. But I mean, that's not super encouraging when you see it, I don't think, especially if we're expecting some Ray velocity to come back into the meta too.
Well, Sabine always pops up when people are experimenting, and that's a good time to bring it. People are trying new things and messing around. You know, that's the time to come in with Sabine and just punish them, because you know Sabine's a known quantity that's just going to get you fast. And even if people are, you know, getting past the experimental phase out in Portland, you're still going to see it because it's going to be a long day. And this is a good choice for if you want to have short matches and mental breaks. Frankly, it was a big part of why I played it in Minneapolis.
Hell yeah.
But to your point, I went 7-2. I made it to day 2, but my 2 losses were to Han Green and Han Green again.
Mm-hmm.
Han1 Green, not good for Sabine, right? And if we're going to see more and more of that, it's going to be a problem for our Sabine players.
Yeah,
we're always saying that every time you forget about Sabine, she pops back up, punches you in the face, and then disappears for a couple of weeks. I mean, so that's it's like
back into
kind of what happened again.
Yeah,
and for another 5 odd months, she's going to keep doing that because she is the best, like most resilient aggro leader in the game still.
Yeah.
So like she's going to pop back up in what feels like random times just because she'll spike it. And even if she has bad match, like the matchup stats aren't good, but that doesn't mean that you can't dodge most of those or show up at the right time, right?
You know,
just spike it.
Exactly. So real quick, we have our champions here from this past week. Again, the aforementioned Sabine, 3 wins, Han Solo 2, 3 wins.
That's
as
what
well.
I want to talk about.
Yeah. So Kyle, we casted that event like we mentioned that one there, and you know what it felt like? It felt like Big Brother versus Little Brother. You know, just to recap, it was Han2 Blue versus Han1 Blue, and it just felt like every time, this was in the finals, right? Every time that Han1 Blue got a foothold, it was just like, okay, crate, okay, this, okay, that, here's a giant unit, deal with it. And to credit, there was ways to deal with multiple crates and multiple games, but the relentless nature of these giant units in Han2 Blue just kept on coming and coming.
Yeah, in the end, Han2 Blue just came over the top, and it was too much, to your point. But yeah, I do think it was interesting. We talked about this last week. I mean, I've been on Han2 Blue basically this whole set. And we kind of talked about, is it dead? And, you know, my prediction was, no, I don't think so. I mean, force throw, when used to its fullest extent, was typically used to force throw yourself to deal with a big threat that you couldn't otherwise deal with for cheap. So the answer, you know, the question was, well, how do you just replace that capability? Because there's still a lot of really awesome things this deck does. And if you could just still do that, you know, how do you get by? And so if you look at the Han2 Blue decks, what did they put in? And it's exactly what we thought they would. Entrenched was the primary benefactor, right? So, you know, you're dealing with a piloted up Chewie ship. You know, previously you force throw yourself to kill it. Well, now you just entrench it, right? If you're dealing with these big threats or you need time to deal with them, you just entrench it. So it was a combination of entrenched and open fire are the cards that I saw go into all these Han2 Blue decks to replace force throw. That makes a lot of sense. It kind of serves the same purpose. And in the end, this is still a very strong deck, still doing what it does. I do want to give a shout out to Alex in the one that we commentated in Wisconsin. Alex was the winner. Alex is a friend of ours, or we met him when we were out in Minneapolis. Friend of ours and hunting here locally. So we know Alex, rooting for him, and good to see him get the win. That was pretty cool. But yeah, as we look at the list, I made a copy of his list to show here. It's exactly that, right? This deck is basically the same, except for now you see 3 entrenched, and we were already running a little bit of entrenched main.
Oh yeah, I ran it at Worlds. So, yeah.
Yep.
So a couple notes that I would add in addition to that, really well said though, is that I've also seen people getting a little bit more consistent in their builds, right? Like instead of adding things, making it so they had less like 2 ofs and 1 ofs, which I think could be functional as well too, right? But yeah, open fire and entrench, I think were the real decision point changes there. I also saw some Carabas, which I thought was pretty interesting as well. Different use cases and stuff, but different strokes for sure.
There's a card that pops out to me that's different from when, at least when you guys were running it, was a Cham in the side actually coming in. I'm assuming it's because of Han1 showing back up everywhere now too.
Yeah, pretty much. And also just a solid unit. But going back here again, very small sample size, but the things that Han2 Blue struggled into are, again, some of the things outside of Sabine. This is a little bit not what you would expect. Maybe Force Throw does make it weaker. That's definitely possible, Kyle. But who knows? Again, very small sample size. But I do think the big stuff is still going to be a problem for Han. So if we're expecting to get a little bit bigger, which is the next topic that I want to talk about, I don't know if I don't think that's very good for Han2 Blue. I think like the two matchups that really popped that were bad were Palp 1, and it's 2 games. It's 3 total games, 1 and 2, and Piet Red 1 and 3. Right. And those are just decks that could get really, really big, and sometimes it happens really, really fast.
Yeah, Palp's play rate didn't really grow too much. I mean, that was a problem before. Yeah. It's a problem now. It's still a fairly minor problem.
Sure.
I think one of the things that Han2 Blue really got was the deck that I did not want to run into was Quinlan.
Yep.
And Quinlan dropped off the table. Now, to my surprise, it's not totally gone.
I saw a couple,
I expected it to be like gone.
Mm-hmm.
To see 3 of them still make top 8s was actually a little surprising to me, but it's not nearly where it was before. I mean, in our last PQ here in Colorado, I mean, my 2 losses were to Quinlan, right? And so like, if there's no Quinlan around, I felt great with Han2 Blue. So, you know, I feel a little more confident playing Han2 Blue, knowing I don't have to worry about Quinlan too much anymore.
Yeah.
3 of them making top 8 is way different than 3 of them winning PQs.
Yeah, and being 10 of them in the top 8, right?
So,
it's a big difference.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting here, and again, just a huge shout out to Swoobase for all of this data because it's really invaluable here. But we see Vigilance, Command, Villainy be the most popular aspect pair this past weekend at 13.6%. After that, we see Red Green Hero at 13.6, Command Aggression Villainy at 13.3, and then it goes back down to Villainy and smaller percentage points here. What I found really interesting was that Blue Green Villain was represented by a lot of different decks, right? We saw Thrawn Data Vault pop up. We saw Kira. We saw Gar ECL, which I could take an argument for that not being like a quote unquote control deck, but you bear with me, it's the same colors, a lot of similar cards, right? As well as Kylo. And that to me is foretelling of just overall interest in colors. And I don't know if it's just me thinking about the rise of these sorts of decks. Actually, spoiler alert, the Data Vault deck that I want to talk about at the end of the podcast tonight is a Villainy deck as well. But, you know, I found that interesting. Is that just me, or do you guys think that is, you know, thought provoking as well?
I think the interesting thing to go along with that isn't just the play rate of it, but look at the conversion rate. I was actually expecting a lot higher conversion rate from Blue Green Villain.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like while there may be more more represented Blue Green Villain decks, they're a bit split out among a couple of different leaders, but they're still getting taken out by something in the meta, whether it's Sabine, whether it's Boba Fett. I do think both of those have pretty good game into a lot of the Blue Green Villain decks too. So it's kind of interesting to see that maybe that's what's propping up Boba right now, you know? And I didn't see a whole heck of a lot of, or at least not as much Ray Data Vault as I expected, which is something I think Blue Green Villain's actually pretty good against. So it's kind of interesting to see where the growth might end up, where the growth spots are, and I expected actually a lot more from Blue Green Villain.
That's interesting. Kyle?
Yeah. The other problem with Blue Green Villain, like Kira specifically, is that you know, Han1 Green can be a tough matchup, right? Sure. And so you still, if we're going to see a big return of the Han1 Green deck, I think that's probably going to be challenging for some of this Blue Green Villain, and so that might hold it down a little bit as well. But it did come up. I mean, we saw 5 Kiras make top 8s. That's a lot more than we've seen recently, right? It's been 1 or none for some time. So it's definitely on the rise. That's for sure. But if we keep talking about kind of the Minneapolis meta, there was a lot of Kira there too, but it had the same issues.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, we saw Wu win the whole event, but it was kind of just the Wu show making it that far. The Kiras outside of there struggled into the rise of some of the Sabines, some of this Han1 Green, that sort of thing. So I think, very similar to kind of what we saw there. It makes sense. We're going to see it, but I don't think we're going to see it break through as the dominant colors. So the dominant color style.
I guess the argument is that last week it was the dominant overall color style in terms of overall placement in the meta. Dominant in terms of interest, not performance, like Sharkey mentioned. But what was interesting to me is that like there's no real leader in the clubhouse. I guess you could argue it's Kira, you could argue it's Gar Saxon, and if you sat down and said, "Hey, I think that this one is the best Data Vault deck, that one is the best one," I think I would say, "Okay, I'll hear you out." You know what I mean? And I think that is interesting to see over the next couple weeks if there's one, and I guess just like universally on the pod. Let's just set a standard here real quick. Is Gar Saxon in this category, or is he separate from this category?
I think he's still in this category, but he would be kind of in the if you're doing the which one is the best ECL version,
sure,
right? But I think it still falls into this category. And the one you haven't even mentioned is Kylo. We saw Loopy playing Kylo.
Yep.
I sometimes keep going back and forth between Kira and Kylo. There's a lot of things about the Kylo that I like, as far as being able to cycle and turning on Anakin, that sort of thing.
A lot to like.
Yeah, it's a tough choice.
I do think Gar counts in the same category, and I'm actually a little shocked by how few Kylo DVs there were. They're significantly less represented than all three of Kira, Gar, and Iden, who seem to be carrying the flag for a lot of the blue-green build and stuff right now. Loopy did great with it, but he's one of, it looks like 4 Kylo DVs on the weekend, which is, I would have probably flipped Kylo and Iden if I had to pick a guess last week if I had to put numbers to it.
So I've been like slowly plugging away at this Thrawn deck that I'm going to talk about later on. And I was asking you guys in our Discord over the past week as we've been hanging out, what's the most popular, what do you think is going to be the most popular Data Vault deck? And I was surprised to see that basically everybody was saying Kylo, and we were all wrong. Right. I thought that it was going to be Kylo also. And again, it was Kira for now. Let us know if you think it's going to change next week and if Gar Saxon is in that category. Okay. Any other notes on this past week, or should we get to some prep work?
Well, I just wanted to make at least one note of kind of just mentioning who are the losers of the Force Throw change. The biggest loser was Kylo Tarkentown. That deck, we can hold its funeral service. It's gone. Dead and gone. And it makes sense because that was Force Throw was integral to the strategy there as far as being able to activate Tarkentown early, keep the hand size down so that you can lead into a pillage so that you can guarantee or protect your Kylo flip. I think that deck is either going to have to change dramatically or just kind of take a dirt nap here for a little bit. And then the other ones we already talked about a little bit was Quinlan. It actually surprised me the amount of Quinlan that stayed. But it was definitely on a downward trend, and I expect that to continue unless we see kind of a revamp or a reimagining of that deck. And then the other one I wanted to mention was Yoda Red. We were really seeing Yoda Red start to come up,
definitely quite a bit.
Be very prominent in the meta. I think as we're going back to the blue-red hero deck, we see that Han2 takes that position right back where it was, and I think we see Yoda get pushed out. I think Yoda really needed, being such a longer strategy to get to your Yoda flip, really needed that Force Throw to help protect itself to get there. And with that going away, I think we're going to see Yoda. Although the same as Quinn, there were 3 Yodas that still made it. So unlike Kylo Tarkentown, not dead, but still exists. Yeah, there was some interesting stuff.
The successful Yoda's actually migrated from red to green.
Yeah, I saw that one with one like Yoda and Clone and stuff. So, it's kind of true of all 3 of those decks, though. The Kylo Tarkentown, the Quinn Tarkentown, and the Yoda are all going to have to evolve to survive, but we're going to see their play rates far down from where they were.
Totally. Cool. Okay, so now it's the question of like, hey, dude, like you're going to sectors, you're going to PQ this weekend, less and less PQs each week, but sectors is coming up, and we just talked about what was last week, and now try to figure out what is going to be next week. So we all kind of said little things that we think will be more and less popular as we get there, but I'll just kick it off and I'll go with the first one. I think we're going to see quite a bit. If you're going to Portland sectors, I think just straight up, easy one to sit down and say, but if you're going, you need to be prepared to play Han1 Green, and you need to be prepared to beat it both from a space perspective and the standard 5, 6, 7 perspective, right? So let's just start there. Like, what do you have to do?
Yeah, so if we're looking at Han1 Green here, this is my list. Now, this is very similar to Alex the Greatest list, I believe. A couple of little things that I enjoy here. I still like to have a Luke in the sideboard. I'm not sure he's doing that. I think we're in a pretty healthy traitorous meta, potentially. So I like to get a little spicy and at least main board one traitorous. The sideboard, salvage is probably not going to make the sideboard anymore. Part of that was to recycle, but part of that was as force throw defense. And so I don't have to worry about that anymore. But in a general sense, Han1 Green, I am attempting to aggressively ramp. Hopefully, I have a couple different lanes. I can hit you from space. I can hit you from ground.
Yep.
Compared to what we saw in the Minneapolis meta, what did this deck gain? Two things of importance. Obi-Wan being able to slap a Sentinel on the ground to kind of just slow down your opponent in a race situation. Very good. I can pull it with different ways. U-Wing, Kelleran, that sort of thing. Home one from the side. And then, of course, Kelleran being the second thing you get, as you can see, is the 7 I am playing the most of, right? It allows you to expand the board, bring out a big threat, pull from your deck. Very good addition to this deck overall. But Han Green's been a thing for a while, so there's not a lot I can add here aside from saying, bringing in a traitorous or, the 2 new cards that it got. And why they're effective. I think one thing I am doing that, and I want to say Alex is doing this too. I don't know. He changes his list around, but the R2 at the beginning was a card that fell out of favor. I like it again because, again, I really want to mulligan for resupply. And if I don't get it, hopefully I have R2 to dig for it, right? Because I'm really trying to hit that resupply right away and then get to my 7s.
So, I think, if people are going to be playing Han Green this weekend, likely they've already started practicing. I hope so, because it's a tough deck to pick up for 5 days. So Sharkey, be more helpful than Kyle. And from not just a Cad Bane perspective, talk about how you beat this deck.
You have to be able to run them out of gas before they get you. That's really about it, whether it's through discard, because I've been able to do that, even if it's lighter discard. Get them to be scrambling to use the resources they have on the remaining card or 2 that they have. The other one is deal with the units as they show up and if they stretch to do it. So if they put resources down and you have, I know most of them won't do this, but it's just an example. But like they put a thing down and you can just power the dark side of it away. That's a 1 card for 2 card trade there. And you just got to keep running them out of gas like that. Now, I don't know any Hans who will be successful that will trade into a power of the dark side specifically kind of play, but be looking for trades like that you're trying to get. The other thing to think about though is that make sure you have an answer for Chewbacca. You need an answer for Chewbacca in some fashion because that guy will mess up, said previously mentioned power of the dark side play. So if that hinges on your strategy and you have no way to deal with a Falcon piloted by Chewie, it's going to be a quick game.
Yep. So Kyle, the way that I look at it, especially from playing Han Green, especially in like the early portion of the game before we get to 14 whatever, that type of game, there are like 2 juncture points that are kind of fragile. One is that Falcon Chewie, right? Or even Falcon Han insta buff, etc., right? In the past or even now. And the other is the Han flip turn going 5, 6, 7 if that gets interrupted and if that doesn't get interrupted. Would you add any of those juncture points or like key points of the matchup that you think are really important?
No, I don't think so. I mean, once you get beyond that point, I guess I would add it comes down to just wearing your opponent out of answers, right? So you don't want to just necessarily just go bomb after bomb to give them 1-for-1 removal on. Kind of as you get past that Han flip, if this is going to turn into a grindy game, it's definitely the awareness to present multiple threats to grind them out of answers, because you have a lot of ways to do that by, posing multiple threats or smuggling out threats or putting multiple small threats, that sort of thing in one turn. So that's, I think, one of the things that kind of the final junction maybe is, sometimes with this deck, it being so versatile in an aggro matchup, you can straight race them. In a mid-range matchup, you can try to come over the top of them. But in a long matchup, it's the awareness of how to grind without just giving up 1-for-1 trades. You need to present multiple threats.
Yeah. So from the other perspective, that requires quite a lot of patience, right? Yeah. And very, very delicate resource perspectives, and also not letting them get into those grinding loops, whether that is tech, whether that is, U-Wing, Home 1, Kelleran, being able to.
Kelleran and U-Wing are the big ones there.
Yeah, right. So I think those are the key points, and you really do want to try to limit some of the card advantage stuff, make it painful, make it awkward for them to get those 5, 6, 7 off with Han. Also, obviously, especially if you're playing yellow villain, No Good to Me Dead is an excellent card in this situation to stop Han from doing that, or kind of derail some of those points. A lot of times, if you are attacking someone's hand, they only are going to have one option that's ideal on that 5, 6, 7 resource turn for Han's flip. And if you interrupt it, they might have to smuggle out an L3, you know, or do something that isn't necessarily exactly what they would want to do. So I think that would be my general advice. I think Sharkey, it's really well said. You have to be able to deal with the Falcon. Traitorous is one way to do it. Bamboozle, upgrade, hate. I know it's painful for some to run upgrade, hate, mate, but right now, like, if you don't have an answer to it, you could just die, and that sucks.
Just lose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason Han1 was gone was because, to your Sharky's point, one of the ways to deal with it is hand hate, and force throw was kind of the quintessential, at least beginning of a hand hate strategy. You know, then you'd follow it up with a pillage or something like that. I'm not sure how effective it's going to be without force throw.
Sure.
But one other note I would give on a card that might be missing here would be Spark of Hope. You know, that might be another ramp option. And then it also helps you in those grind matchups where you can hold it and then you can Spark of Hope back in your tech, for example, that sort of thing, and continue the grind. So Spark Hope's a very good card here that, you know, probably gets worked in. I just haven't gotten there.
So Sharky,
I know both the decks I'm preparing this weekend have at least I don't want to call it minimal. It's actually a little bit more than a minimal discard package to handle specifically Han. It works in other matchups too, but like
sure.
And in Kit Fisto, I brought pillages back into the side for Han Green specifically.
So Sharky, let's go to a deck that you want to talk about. Let's pick one up out of the list that we have set up. So you can talk about Cad, you can talk about Sabine. What are you thinking?
I sent you. What's the other one I sent you? I just saved Cad for last because we all know what I'm really trying to play.
So
this week.
we have Ray Data Vault here, which is one we want to get to. We have Sabine. We have Han2 Blue. We have Boba.
Oh, let's talk about the other Cad. That's right. Let's talk about the Cad 1-drops.
Yeah.
Because that's not the deck I'm preparing, but it is a deck that should be, based on the stats of every week the last, I don't know, 4, it's been growing. You should be ready to play against this deck.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the way I typically tend to play Cad, but it is obviously still very strong, and I would say it's probably the most represented Cad Bane deck in the format, if not by a wide margin. The typical strategy for this one is to play 2 1-drops on turn 1, guarantee the ping Tarkin Town hit, and then they're off to the races because this deck can push damage very fast.
Oh yeah.
Other things of note though that are at least sort of interesting, their middle range curve isn't as robust as the mid-range version, but it is still there. So they can play very well on curve after the first turn of 2 1-drops. And they can also just push damage by gun from the row. If it gets late, you start dropping, Ruthless Raiders. The Waylay's there to deal with the Sentinels. You got the No Good to Me Deads there to deal with big pilot stacks that show up, whether it's Han, whether it's Kazuda, pick your pilot stack, and that's there to keep them out of the race long enough to win it. Mm-hmm. This thing actually is relatively versatile if it gets off the ground, and if it gets off to the races, it's going to be hard to catch back up.
Kyle?
Yeah, I'm going to predict a downturn for this deck. The reason this deck came to be and became popular was to target Quinlan. And there's not going to be as much Quinlan, right? So a lot of the 1-drops was to avoid the Quinlan pings, was to race and cause problems for Quinlan while keeping your Tarkin Town online and avoiding theirs, right? I saw that it was played last week. I was just surprised. I would expect more of a return to kind of the mid-range type Cad Bane. I think you probably agree, Sharky. I think the mid-range is just better. I like it better too if I'm playing Cad. And I would think we'd see more of a return towards your style, of the Cad Bane. We'll see. I have the numbers bear out, but
we're talking about this one, right? I mean, this is the one that is being played, right? So for
last week, I'm trying to predict. If I'm going to Portland, I am less preparing for this deck because I'm going to hedge that I'm not going to see as much of it.
Yeah, I think that's
I think it'll be there in stronger numbers,
right? I don't think that there's a lot of evidence to really convince me of that. I hear you on the origin with Quinlan. I think that's valid. But, this week, no one was really expecting Quinlan, and it was still, there and doing its thing. But I think it can be challenging to play against this, especially if you're not used to it. I think like it plays a lot differently than the standard CAD matchup, and especially in those first opening turns, right, Sharky?
Yeah, so one of the things that I actually really like about the rise of this deck is that it makes my mid-range deck a little bit better too. Like they both kind of help each other out in certain ways because you don't fight them the same way.
So how do you fight this
mid-range one? So this one, you need to kill their units, and you need to do it before you can't. You have to 2-for-1 them as best you can. You kind of have to understand what it's trying to do, because honestly, it doesn't really recover as well as the mid-range one does to being disrupted. However, disrupting is actually a lot harder than, like, I'm not making it sound as difficult as I think it actually is. It's not easy to disrupt this deck, but if you can disrupt this deck and get some breathing room, you can get out ahead and it can't catch back up. So what you need to do is make sure you kill something. Sorry, I didn't mean to, I'll let you continue in a second, but like make sure like on the turn one, if you can, kill something with the thing you're about to lose to Tarkin Town, because you're going to probably lose your thing to Tarkin Town. But if you can set it up to also take one of their units out, suddenly their board is a whole lot less scary. Sorry,
yeah, I saw something in multiple lists this week, and the only reason I could come up for it was this deck, and it was Han1s having Grogu in their sideboard. Right, in Han2, I understand the Grogu, obviously. You turn one, you cheat it out, he's now online, you could use it to kill something. And then you could do Grogu shenanigans, or you could around Tarkin Town, you know, committing resources, that sort of thing. But why would I play it in Han1, right? And I guess my thought process was, I mean, he's still a big butt, and I can get him out on turn one. So against this deck, I guess with Han1, I could put a resource down, I could play Grogu, and now you can't kill it with Tarkin Town, even if you do ping it. Yeah. And if you do ping it, now I can use his ability to kill one of your one butt units. So I thought that must be what these Grogus are for, unless you guys have an idea, or maybe somebody online can help me.
For some of the space stuff too, right? Like you are losing outside of Anakin and Luke some cross arena interaction with that.
But how do you get damage on him to make it work? Like I don't.
Well, there's damage around. You know, I'm just devil's advocating it.
I also think Grogu's good into Boba, so like Boba, like you can put damage on Grogu there,
and you know, you don't.
And he does overlap.
That probably is the answer, because you don't really have the type of spaceships that you need to fight Boba, right? So maybe that kind of stuff helps.
So Grogu's really good there. The other one to think about is Red Green Hero. I would be a little shocked if like even Sabine's didn't start running Gunji. Gunji just says okay,
it's 2/5,
and then kills like. Yeah, he might eat a Tarkin Town. He might even only trade 1-for-1, but at that point, Tarkin Town is down and they only have 1 unit left.
There was one Sabine this weekend running a Ketsu, which is my old friend, similar to Sabine. I've liked it in certain builds. Kyle, there was a sequence when you were playing Han2 Blue against CAD that you like for your opening turn. Could you describe that a little bit?
Against this CAD? Well, at least in RPQ, I did face one of these, and I ended up winning 2-0. You know, some of that could be draw or whatever.
Sure.
But, you know, the way I tried to at least attack it was, well, if I could get a Force Crafty in my starting hand, that's what I wanted, right? Because then even if you do ping it, at least I don't lose it. It can't get Tarkin Town. I can trade with it. But typically what I would try to do is, you know, again, I think turn one is probably the most important turn, and you don't want to just get blown out by Tarkin Town. So I would typically pass. I mean, what are they going to do? Play nothing? They're the aggro deck. They're going to play a 1-drop. And then I would usually pass again. And so if they claim, fine, they only got 1 unit down and I didn't lose to a Tarkin Town. And if they did play their second unit, then I would play down and I would get Tarkin Town on a subsequent turn. But I think the worst situation is exactly what they're trying to do, is when they go 1-drop, you play something, they go another 1-drop, and they Tarkin Town your original play. So now they've killed your play and they've got 2 units to your none, and they're off to the races. So I was trying to, you know, hold them to 1 unit as best I could.
Yeah, that's a fantastic strategy for that one that I've found as well. And I know that from a personal experience, like I can beat it pretty handily with Kit because of similar things we just talked about, like Gunji first into Kit's ability just takes out their first 2 units. Cad Bane mid-range is actually really good into it too, because the same strategy ends up being let them only get 1 unit off effectively. Whether it's 1 unit attacking or 1 unit dying the next turn, it still ends up being a 1 unit thing. You're trading 1-for-1, keeping them off the board as much as you can.
And we see more running that IG 2000, which I bet is to combat and mirrors, right? Like that has Mirror Breaker written all over it. All right, Kyle, you're up. What do you want to talk about?
Well, you're talking about current meta decks.
The decks that we want, that we're preparing for a sector. So just role playing. You're a viewer watching, and you need some advice on how to get ready for one of these decks.
One deck that we did not mention yet on this call, but was significant in the top 8 was Poe. We casted a couple of Poe games in the Wisconsin PQ. And I think it's interesting because Poe is a deck I've been personally working on. I think we talked about it last week, but the version I've been working on is Poe Data Vault. And we talked about the reasons why for Data Vault. A lot of it is I'm going to be the do you have an answer for Chewy deck, but also it was you get Blue Leader, you get the HP out of the Data Vault, and you're trying to race somebody. But what was interesting to me, and a lot of the placement I saw this weekend was Poe Yellow. And so what I've been working on this week is exactly that, Poe Yellow. From the kind of play rate and conversion rate, it's definitely a deck you're going to run into, at least some sort of space pilot strategy. That might be Han1 Green. But this was a deck or a similar version of this we did see be pretty popular this week. So when I'm trying to switch between Poe Data Vault and Poe Yellow, I did take Poe Data Vault. I think I'm going to retire it to a local store showdown, and it did well. But then I started to see this happen this week, and I said, okay, why Poe Yellow? What am I giving up, and then what am I gaining? And so with Poe Yellow, it's a smaller deck, so you get consistency. I'm losing the HP compared to the Data Vault base, but you get a lot of good yellow strategy here, right? A couple of the things that I do like, obviously the Falcon, awesome. Han Pilot, awesome. Outmaneuver, so you can tap down the board, especially against these blue decks. There's a lot of blue hero decks with a lot of restore. Outmaneuver is great in that matchup, right? But there were some things that I hadn't really considered before that I saw pop up, like this 2/2 ship that gets a shield to give you a little resiliency in space, especially if you're playing like a 1-drop on turn 1 with a yellow ship. That seemed to be pretty effective for the people I saw running it. And then also the 4/5, the larger ship that, wind piloted, kind of gives you that action cheat hit base, that sort of thing. So this list here is not exactly one of the lists that we saw this weekend. This is kind of my take on it, but it's a deck that I continue to work on that I think is very strong and could see some success this weekend.
Yeah. But I mean, how much would you really expect to see this in Portland? Like, give me a percentage prediction. Cause I think we're talking low single digits.
Well, I mean, if you look at the rates compared to other decks that we're already mentioning here, it's not too far behind, right? Poe in the top 8 conversion was represented at 5%. There were 6 Poes that made top 8s, and there was 5% overall. So that puts him right next to Kira, actually above Kira. Cad Bane at 6-7, so in between Kira and Cad. So we focused on those 2 decks, and he's sitting right between them.
So if you were sitting here getting ready to prepare for going to Portland, this would be on your prep list to make sure that you were.
In general, it is deal with space pilot BS. Okay. So this is the flavor I prefer. Yeah, we'll put it in a lump. But you need to have an answer to space pilot BS, right? Whether it be Poe or if you run into a Kaz or a, heaven forbid, a wedge like I did at one of our recent PCs.
Sabine can pull it off too.
Sure.
Yeah, and Han Green. It depends on their strategy. I mean, some Han Greens lean a lot harder into the space strategy and go straight for that. So, generally you need an answer. And when in the force throw meta, a lot of time that answer was force throw myself, kill your space pilot BS.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that anymore, what is your answer? In the blue decks, it may be entrenched, right? But in other colors, what are you going to do? Because you don't want to just get popped by a space BS pilot deck.
And in the blue colors, also, another common answer is like the Yaddle Swarm Restore Gang, right? Where you're just outdoing, and then obviously that's why outmaneuvers become a lot more popular in recent weeks to stop that from being a valid thing. I think another thing to think about with this sort of deck, and I think it's just Poe overall, is that like there's like janky versions, there's more like robust versions. Like we saw this Black Squadron really do work on stream at that Wisconsin PQ. It's a 4/6 in space. It's tough to deal with. You have big Poe as well. You have to ambush into Han. It's flexible, and then on the ground, you have Poe who does a solid amount of damage on his deployed side also. So yeah, I think it's a strong deck. I think I would say that if I had to guess what a percentage was of the fielded sectors, I would say probably under 3%, but I think it's a really fun deck. I'll tell you, I bought a Poe showcase on Saturday after we were done casting. I bought 2 showcases, one Poe and one Thrawn. So
I assumed it was going to be because I kicked your butt with Poe last Friday.
oh no,
I got to get on that.
That butt kicking was stupid. That was just I didn't have an answer to like an 8 Voltron pilot. That don't factor in anything.
Well, that's the point. That's what we're talking about here.
For this time, right?
You better have an answer.
Well, going back to what we were talking about with Han, like that was one of the first deck we spoke about in this little section here. You know, you have to have an answer. Okay, so Sharky, I'll go next. Then you could get one ready for what you have to prepare for. But the one that I'm thinking about is Han1 Blue. I mean, it didn't get the wins everywhere, right? I think it was pretty good, right? I still like the deck a lot. It still has some weakness against green, and also now we know Han2 Blue. But I think it's a very strong deck, and I think it's going to be probably one of the most popular decks in Portland this coming weekend. How do you fight it, Kyle?
Well, so I played a good amount of it with you, and
Yep.
the reason I got off of it was because what I learned is, and you already hinted at it a little bit, was ramp.
Yep.
Any deck that ramps, I felt like I just was done. And there's multiple versions of that, right? Han1 Green ramping, I just lost every time, right? But if we're going to see a return of Kira, other villain decks that ramp, same problem. And so this deck feels oddly extra susceptible to getting ramped over and then falling behind. And so that was the primary attack vector that I had problems with, was A, ramp, and B, other decks just getting bigger than me. I mean, you have cool stuff here. You have Lukes, you have Anakins, you have some top end, but that's as high as you go. And when decks go Crate Dragon or they ramp and they either come just, you draw it out and just come harder over the top, or ramp and get ahead of you too fast. Those are the two problems I had playing this deck.
You run out of answers, right? Whether it's power, rivals, the amount of Anakins, the amount of Lukes, has a similar card advantage issue as well. Obviously, some good smuggle in these colors though, so maybe you could avoid it. Who knows? Sharky, or I guess Kyle, let me finish up. Do you disagree that this is going to be a popular deck in Portland this weekend?
I think we'll see the gap between green and blue widen. I think it will still be there. I think we'll see the play rates there. But whereas we saw the gap today between it, what was it? It was 9 green, 5 blue in the top 8s. That's close-ish.
Yeah. What about overall? Give me an overall prediction for how percentage for Han1 Blue and Han1 Green too, if you want.
I'm not sure the exact number. I guess what I'm getting at is I think it'll widen from 2-1 to 3-1 at least, right? So when we look at the final numbers between the two, I'm gonna predict that the gap will widen by a full margin.
And just to be clear, you're ignoring the question about overall representation and talking about conversion there, or are you talking about overall?
I'm talking about both overall representation and conversion. I think will match, and I think that we'll see the margin between the two widen as blue gets less and less popular and effective, whereas green will grow and in both popularity and conversion.
Got it. Sharky, what do you think about that?
I can see it grow. I don't know if it'll grow that much. I actually faced against a Han1 Blue this weekend at the showdown I went to while you guys were casting, and I think there's some interesting tech actually in that one that isn't here, that can make it a little more resilient, but it is still susceptible to being ground out by some of the red-green hero decks that can go real late, like Han2 or Kit. I know no one else is running Kit, but like Han2 can really grind out late games, and even Sabine can kind of outgrind a little late games if they survive the Anakin, basically. And I think that the tech specifically that I'm talking about was the Tranquility.
Yeah.
Being able to recycle some of the units back, bring Anakin back, put Anakin back on the field, bring it, do that cycle again. And that seemed to be at least somewhat effective in mitigating what I think is one of the weaknesses, is just getting ground down and run out of answers for this deck. So let's put it this way, it will be a popular deck. I don't know that its conversion rate will be as good as this weekend. I think it'll be at least show up, possibly 2 or 2.5 to 1 for the other ones, but I don't think it'll convert nearly as well as the green deck will.
That's really interesting. I hadn't considered that. So the Tranquility brings back Republic units.
Yeah.
And our new Anakin, who's busted in this deck because he's always on, is Republic.
Unit.
So you can recycle your Anakins. I do like that. I like
the issue is that you could really only do it with Ezra, Yaddle, and Anakin, which you would like to have some more
Tranquility.
Yeah, but it's nice, and in my first inclination of it, that's what I had as well. but it didn't make it off the testing room floor. In the Carlos's deck here, this is one of the players from late night. He did well at the Wisconsin PQ that we've been mentioning. He's the one running Grogu, right? And also Zoe Bliss and the daughter. I thought that was interesting. And spare the target over Waylay. Obviously, I think that's just to make sure you have more heroic stuff for Anakin. So he's always turning on. I think that's smart. You know, a few times in life you might want to bounce your own unit, but probably few and far between. And then the Enfys Nest isn't a card you see being played often, and we're talking the 6-drop Enfys Nest as well. So you know, I thought that was really interesting to see.
It's interesting he's doubling up on the backup plan for 6, because I've seen Enfys Nest used in Han Yellow. Han Yellow was still popular with DJ. Is a lot of them started running Enfys 6-drop as the backup for, oh god, Han got exhausted, right? And it still ends up being an effective turn. When I personally found it more effective against me than Zori, right? So it's cool to see I mean, at this point, I don't even know if Han cares about getting to 7 with this deck.
Yeah, I don't think with this deck you're even trying to run to 7. Like the plan is to go to 6, not 7, really.
I think it just depends. Like in my testing, it is nice to be able to go 7 and then 6, because it's harder to get up to 7 the following turn. So if you want to go, in my experience, it's easier to go Anakin and then Luke than Luke and then Anakin. Or excuse me, it's easier to go Luke and then Anakin rather than Anakin then Luke. Tongue twister for me. But yeah, you don't need it as much as the other decks, that's for sure. I mean, it's the best 6 in the game probably right now. So that's cool. All right, we can move on from this deck. One other note from Carlos here, though, the No Good to Be Dead. I like that. We've been talking about like maybe Frozen and Carbonite, Power, but I think No Good to Be Dead is pretty cool as well, especially with more Han going around on that flip turn. Okay, Sharky, what do you want to talk about? What deck? We got Ray, Sabine. On our list.
Let's bring Ray out.
Okay, let's talk about Ray.
This one actually was a little less represented than I expected, but it's going to be in a strong spot. It can, as previously mentioned, grind. This thing, I think, would actually match up very well into Han1 Blue, because this thing can just keep grinding and can make favorable trades and can just run them out of answers, to the point of it being like, it feels almost inevitable when it works, and it works pretty often. So it's like, it's really tough, I think, to outgrind Ray. You have to then figure out how to make sure you can push enough damage through all the million restore units they have to then try to close the game out before they just grind
and
the answers.
And
this thing just has so many answers like that. It's insane, and it's cool to see work when you're watching it on fast forward. But
Kyle,
this one you should be prepared for.
Did you cast the Palp and Ray game with me?
I did not, but I was a watcher of it. That
game was silly. You know, we'll put a link in the description. It's from late night.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Rando Mando stabilized at like 28 HP. I think that this Micah Overly played Village Protector like 18 times in the 3 games. Like it went to time. It was just a ridiculous back. It made me like not be like, I don't want to play either of these decks ever. You know?
The most important thing you just said is that they went to draw.
Yeah.
If you're going to play this deck, you're probably going to see some draws. In fact, at the store showdown that I was just at this past weekend, somebody brought this deck and went to draw, right? Well, the store didn't enforce draw, but they went well over an hour. How about that?
Oh, yeah. So, you know, I think that's something that you probably need to think about when you're doing your deck selection, is that, dude, if you're going to play this, you got to get out. You got to be moving. You don't want it to be because of you, because you could always look back and say, what could I have done better and what could I have changed? And you got to make quick decisions. And sometimes this deck makes it so you can't make quick decisions.
Yeah, one comment there. Somebody did play this against me in the PQ down at Mythic, and I was on Han2 Blue. And I just want to point this out. Ogdo Bogdo eats this deck's lunch. Okay. Every single one of your turn one awesome. Plays, Ogdo Bogdo wrecks. Ogdo Bogdo is a menace for this deck. And so to say that this might be a good matchup, I don't know. It was a 2-0 for me. Both games, Ogdo Bogdo was just like, this game is over.
I said it was a good matchup for Han1, not Han2.
Oh, okay. Pardon me.
Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting conversation point, though, right? Because we've been talking about this whole episode how we were a little bit surprised that Ray wasn't more popular than she was, and that we might expect her to be more popular these following weeks. And because of that, Boba might not be as popular.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Han2 Blue sitting over here beating that ass. getting
Yeah.
the most wins. And Kyle, like you mentioned, that is really tough. And you have Crate Dragon, which just sucks,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think if I'm going to bring this deck, it's because I'm feeling really confident there's going to be a lot of Boba, and I'm just going to eat them up. Boba cannot win this matchup, and if I think I'm just going to eat up Boba Data Vaults, and it was the most represented deck, to your point,
By a lot.
then you could be well positioned.
Okay, so I guess to that point, was Han2 Blue a fluke?
No, I think Han2 Blue was never going anywhere, and I think it's going to continue to be a very viable deck. The one thing that I haven't played enough matchups, though, with Han2 Blue personally is into Han1 Green. So I don't have good feedback on that matchup because it's just one I haven't played enough. If you're playing Han2 Blue, you're not playing green, so you're not ramping. And it could be a similar problem to Han1 Blue, is if they start just ramping out ahead of you too much, it would be very hard for you to potentially recover. And so that's a little bit of a blank spot for me with that deck particularly that I need to spend some more time on.
Yeah. You know what?
I
could see that matchup being really similar to the Han2 Green versus Han2 Blue matchup, where early in the game, Han Blue is very favored. In that crate phase, they're very favored, but when you get to the next phase of the game where Kellerins and U-Wings are involved, obviously we're talking about the version where Han1 Green now has the more recursion, the more home one stuff. I can imagine that portion of the game being a little bit of a challenge for Han2 Blue, but the big difference there is the access to Crate Dragon, right? Han2 Green had that ability to slam it down as well. But yeah, I bet that's a good fun matchup. Maybe we'll get a chance to practice that and play a little bit.
Maybe you slip Pillage into the sideboard, right? Just for that.
Yeah. Honestly, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and you know what? I was late night, I was like passing out and I got an idea to work on like a Han2 Yellow, really heavy discard. And
I've run into that online. I mean, there's a lot of discard those colors.
Oh yeah. I was thinking to myself, what is the best discard deck?
I've made a kit version of that too.
Yeah, let me know in the comments what the best discard deck is, and I'll build that. Okay, I guess a couple news and notes as we get out of here. We got Sharky's deck. We have one more deck to talk about. We'll hit on Sharky, what you're going to be playing this weekend if you want to talk about that. If not, that's cool as well.
I may have alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to play my patented Cad Bane deck. This one is the mid-range version. Yep. There's probably plus or minus 2 or 3 cards that I'll swap out at the last minute just because it's what I like to do. But this is dang near the same thing that I ran last week. Was it last week? Mm-hmm. The Utah PQ I went to, which time isn't real. And it went well enough there that I think I'm just going to bring it back and keep doing it. I don't think there's many changes. I'm currently testing an Arm to the Teeth in the main deck, but that used to be Fennec. On the sideboard, I brought back Surprise Strikes, and I had brought them out to test a few other things last week, but I felt a little naked without them. But other than that, it plays pretty much like every other Cad Bane I've been building for the last, I don't know, call this one 6 months old at this point.
Yeah, it looks pretty standard.
It's relatively standard for the way I play it. It is a little bit higher than 50 cards, which is kind of the new standard for Cad Bane.
How much higher is it?
52.
Okay, that's not bad. I thought you were
it's not bad, especially with Java cycling cards.
Yeah.
No, I try to make sure I cut it back down to 52. 52 is about my max where I'm comfortable with. There are certain players like Raytan who don't mind going 53, 54, but he's really good at doing that, and I am not as practiced with that. So I'm happy with 52. And there's some interesting lessons that I've taken from the ones deck, like the Arm to the Teeth. I'm trying out, and I actually really like it. It's not super hard to set up. It's a good backup plan for Cad's flip turn.
Mm-hmm.
The other things I brought in that worked really well for me last week is Tip the Scale. We've talked about a lot of different events that are a real pain to deal with, events and upgrades that are a pain to deal with for Cad Bane. Overwhelming Barrage, Craving Power, Rivals Fall. A lot of those things that typically people need to use to deal with Cad Bane on his flip turn are suddenly able to be sniped, and it doesn't replace it. Because I still have Bazine in the deck for the other stuff, like the Crate Dragons. I don't mind replacing that one, but Tip the Scale, being caught by Java, paying 1 or 2 for it, and getting rid of Rivals Fall, then flipping into doing a bunch of damage with an 8 butt, Cad's hard to deal with, man. So that's the game plan for the weekend.
Yeah, I was thinking also resupply, right? If we're seeing this Han Green deck appear as much as it is, seems like a good way to pick that off right away, especially if they put a resource down, you take it out of their hand. Kind of like the old days.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, when you used to play the Han Green versus Han Yellow matchups, it turned into a lot of trying to play chicken with Bodhi, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to that point, what worries you here?
Blue-green villain's never going to be a good matchup. It's winnable, but it's not going to ever be good. They can just sometimes get too far ahead of you over the top. Similarly, Poe Yellow is a tough matchup. That's what ended up ending my run in Utah as a Poe Yellow. And both of the games were very close. I got him to within literally drawing a pump to win one of the games, and a turn going the other direction could have won the second game. So it's not like it's a blowout, but it is a tough one if you don't hit certain beats during that matchup. And so usually the pattern there is anything that can go bigger while still playing a board, though when it goes too far the other direction, I actually find hard control to be a lot easier than those two types of decks. So the softer control is a little tough.
Mm-hmm. Kyle?
Yeah.
You mean how to attack this deck?
Yeah, what do you think? What are your thoughts? What would you be worried about?
Yeah, I mean, Sharkey and I have played a lot of Kira versus this deck, so I'm not going to add new insight here. I would just hammer back on if Kira is going to be coming back. That's the deck I want to be playing if I'm going against this, for sure. Yep. Either that or a very aggressive deck that potentially has some sort of shield situation going on. Mm-hmm. Those aren't as popular now. I mean, we've talked about like a Talzin Yellow, that sort of thing. I would feel comfortable there, but in general, yeah, soft control, blue-green villain. Maybe I don't know how much you've played against Gar ECL, but I imagine that would be a nightmare for this deck. It's both aggressive and shielded units, plus you get the ECL Vader. I guess if I wanted to target this deck, that's something I'd look at.
It's not a nightmare. Actually, that one's one of the easier blue-green villains to deal with, and I say that as if it's not easy, but like this one's got more play into that because they're trying to also push damage fast and they can run out of gas.
They're not like giant like some of the other decks, you know.
Right.
Like you don't
They're smaller ones, and if you ping the shield, then suddenly the damage that they're trying to push gets a lot smaller, and they can be dealt with fairly easy. Bamboozle also comes in play that one, as well as Relentless Pursuit is much more effective against Gar because they're not really ramping out ahead of me. They're just playing on curve. And on curve, CAD's pretty dang good.
Mm-hmm. So I guess two quick questions would be like, hey, if we're worried about control coming in, there are two cards that aren't in the deck that I always in our testing know that you lean towards in those sorts of matchups. And that is Fennec, right? Usually they take out like a Snoke or something like that. And the other is Ruthless Raider. And I guess Ruthless Raider with no glory is, you know, there's other nuances there and stuff. But I see you nodding. Is that like, has that crossed your mind? Are you kind of just saying, hey, well, even with Fennec, the matchup still kind of blows. Should I just make my strength stronger, or what's the deal?
So I'm still a big Fennec fan. Fennec is probably 63 right now, but I'm still want to test out this Arm to the Teeth thing and see how far I can take it. The other thing about the Raiders is, honestly, no glory or no glory, only results. There we go. It kind of makes it really suck. And my least favorite thing to do on CAD's flip turn is to spend 6 resources on one thing. And so it's not that they're bad. It's not that they don't fit. And it's not even that they're bad for this deck. It's just lately I've been preferring, apologies, I'm diabetic. I've just been preferring not to play them, and they rarely even come in against control decks. And so if I'm not bringing them in against control decks, I'm trying to look at other options. And one of my favorite options that you also know is Unrefusable Offer, which has made its way back into the deck.
Yep.
Hit them with their own ships instead of letting them take my Raiders. So we'll see how it plays out, though.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Okay, well, we'll both be rooting for you. I'm super excited. Hopefully we'll get you on stream a couple times. Every time you'll be getting in the games to the finals, right? So I'm looking forward to seeing how the deck goes. And I think it's well positioned. I think you just got to hope that the potential rise of this stuff doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen next week, right? It's a couple weeks down the line and take it from there. But one other deck that we'll talk about before we get out of here is a deck that I just started picking up last week, and it's this Thrawn Data Vault deck. It did well this weekend at a couple events. I played it. I played against it, and I tried to copy it because I was like, wow, this is really fun. This is really cool. And it's part of why I was curious about what people thought the most popular Data Vault or blue-green villain deck was going to be, because I kind of thought it was going to be Thrawn because of how fun this sort of style was for me, at least. So what it has here is like a similar to a standard soft control blue-green villain build, but it goes a lot smaller as well with a lot of these units. And just earlier tonight, I was playing some games and you were able to double claim a Cobb Vanth trigger with Chimera, and then again on the actual death, and before you know it, you have 4 units on board. And I kind of just wonder a couple of things here, Kyle. You've been playing a lot of this style deck, obviously not Thrawn, but just in general blue-green villain. Do you think the ability to get that many units on the board early makes it so this deck might be well positioned versus other blue-green villain decks?
So I haven't played much of this deck. I understand the idea. You're doing kind of 2 things here. You are being an Anakin deck, and you have ways to turn on Anakin, and then you're also being an ambush Vader deck, which is a very powerful thing to be doing. I just worry about, I don't know how consistent this deck would be. It just seems like the way to turn, you seem very all in on Cobb Vanth here to be able to pull your heroism cards out. I don't feel like you want to be playing that Wolf or Yoda for 5 ever, really. You're going to feel sad if you're doing that. So I guess you're really hoping you're pulling them.
Well, especially in the control matchups, you're looking for that, right? Like, no doubt, clearly, right?
I would think just about any matchup you got to be looking for it. The other thing that sticks out to me about this deck, again, I haven't played it a lot, would be I think it'd be tough. Aggro is going to be a problem, especially if you don't hit that Cobb Vanth to pull those units out. I would think aggro is going to be just like it is for, to answer your question about blue-green villain, some of the things that can get Kira is Sabine. Kira has some more reliable answers, I would think, than what this deck appears to be to me. I would think a very aggressive strategy like a Sabine or maybe a space aggro deck would be problematic for this.
Yeah, and I'm interested to find that out, right? Like maybe it is that you need to get that sort of credit, or maybe it's that you could double claim the Onyx Squadron Brute to get some healing and stuff along those lines. To give this guy the proper shout outs, it's Twill Grimm. He won the Middlesbrough PQ in Great Britain. And Kyle, these were his matchups, right? He played Kanan in the first round, Anakin in the second, Sabine in the third, Cad in the fourth, Poe in the fifth.
You're not giving me wins and losses.
He won them all. He won them all. Han Solo, he tied in the last round of Swiss. Then he beat a Ray Data Vault. He beat a Grand Admiral Thrawn, maybe his teammate. I'm not sure. We'll try to look into it. And then he beat Naiden in the finals. So, I mean, obviously it's a small sample size, and I'm interested to see how this deck gets developed over the next couple weeks. I'm going to be playing a lot more. I'm probably only maybe 30 games in, give or take, right? Yeah, I played against it online, and I was like, wow, I just got, in trouble. So,
but it definitely sounds like
deck.
I was gonna say it definitely sounds like at least in the top 8 and those matchups as you read them off is a control-y meta, and he's definitely doing some things here that makes sense for that sort of meta, like the multiple relentlesses, 3 ofs in all of his top end there, right? So sounds like he ran into some matchups that made sense, and obviously he knew his meta.
Yeah, and I'll be messing with this though too.
To answer your question, why, I don't think this will be the most popular for a while. There's still a lot of nuance to figure out with this Thrawn Data Vault, and I mean that from the opposing side. The ones you can certainly tell who's new to the deck, and I say that because a lot of them will really sell out to get the double trigger on a defeated thing, rather than making the smart play, which may just be to not have your thing get defeated that round. And the ones that I noticed, the other part of it is that the deck seems to really be good if you draw your Night Sister warriors. The deck is just okay if you don't. And so finding out that balance of how do you mix in enough redundant card draw to get to your answers, as well as how do you make the engine work versus how much do you have to answer other people's stuff. And there's still some, I think, tweaking to be found somewhere in the margins there. But this I think is actually one of the more potentially strong blue-green villain decks. I think this one might be even better than Iden once it's figured out. I'm just not sure it's there yet.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I have some questions. I'm unsure about Yoda. I'm unsure about if Snoke's the right answer. I think Lothwolf is really, really sharp. I think that's a really cool way to trigger Cobb. But yeah, I'll be testing this, playing this. I think you'll probably see some Thrawn in Portland at Sector. I think probably maybe, I'll do a little wager. I think similar to Poe Yellow, I'll think you'll see those numbers in some forms or fashion. But again, this archetype is one that has a lot of different ways that different pilots approach it, right? Like some are really going late with Iden, some are playing extreme amounts of removal, like you'll even see Vanquish back in main decks and stuff, and then some here are playing a lot more units, and Kira a lot more of an aggro fight against, and then Kylo is just such a grinder as well, right? So a lot of cool stuff there, a lot of decks to prepare for. It's a wide open meta, and I think we're going to see a lot of development, a lot of changes.
So we know what Sharky's playing. Obviously, we just talked about that. If you were going, what would you be playing, Jordan?
Yeah, I think I probably would be practicing a little bit different if I knew I would be there. So I think right now, if I was going, I would probably be playing Sabine or maybe Han1 Green. I think was probably where I would land to. Again, though, like since I'm not going, I've been playing decks that aren't those things that much. But I think
I know what Kyle would play.
Yeah, I think Kyle would be playing Han1 Green. I guess.
Interesting. I think the top of my list would be Han2 Blue as we speak right now, but definitely right behind it would be Han1 Green or Poe Yellow. Those are the two.
Yeah.
Those are the three that I would have sleeved up and taking with me. I don't know. Maybe my daughter's soccer tournament gets rained out and I get FOMO. And
that's what I'm saying. When the weather comes in.
A lot of rain. I mean, it's in Portland.
My backup deck is Kit Fisto still.
Yeah.
Red Green Hero, I do think Red Green Tall Hero can really grind with the blue green guys too. So I think that one's I think Han Green would be a good position to deck as well.
Yeah. The two decks that I've been playing like the most of recently are Han1 Blue and Talzin Yellow. And I don't think either of them are ready for that. I think Han1 Blue is more ready, but I don't think that I would be super pumped about taking either to a 2-day event or, even a bigger one if you were talking about regionals or something. And I think maybe a week ago, I would have said that I would have played like Poe Yellow. And I think Poe Yellow is in a good spot, a solid spot, but I don't want to be playing matchups Poe versus Ray and Poe versus Data Vault, blue green villain. I just don't want to be doing that. So, and I don't think Simon Sharky's dog does either, right?
Yeah, I think he disagreed with you there, or he agreed that he didn't want to play that matchup.
Yeah. So a lot of things coming up. I do think that we probably are in store for a little bit less of like a quick pace meta, which is what I like. I think we're going to be in for longer rounds, whether it's Ray, Control, or otherwise. But that is an interesting one. So any notes from you guys? Because I want to get one nugget out of Sharky before we get out of here.
No, I think overall, that's where our heads are at. It's definitely gonna be interesting to see how it shakes out, because you do wonder if some people are kind of hiding it. You know what I mean? Like some of these play rates, like we've talked about it over and over, but the Han1 Green, I just feel like people were just bagging it or waiting, and I just, some of these teams I think are probably sitting on what they really think, and that's what we're gonna find.
We had a few people in chat coming to the late night stream over the weekend asking any Botham players here trying to get the spice right, and just Yoda Killer, but he was just on Vader, so nothing too sexy, I don't think. But okay, Sharky, as we're known to do here, we like to leave the listeners with a little nugget, a little note. What is it? And it can't be have fun. I don't want none of that nonsense. I want a good one. I want a solid one. I want a nugget that someone listening will tell their friend about on their drive to Portland. I'll be like, man, that was a good nugget.
If they're telling their friends about it, then I don't know, man. I don't think I can cover that ground.
You're doing it.
The most important part of the prep that I will be doing this week will be making sure I get enough sleep.
Okay.
Like, it sounds trivial, but like you'd be amazed at how much difference sleeping well 2 nights out from a tournament will do for your mental state. You'll make way clearer decisions and you'll be way more on top of your game. And it's a lot harder to get you off of your game as well. So you're a lot more resilient.
Okay.
So weirdly enough, that's what I'm concentrating on.
Kyle, do you agree? Disagree? Do you think less sleep is better, controversially?
No, I want all the sleep I can get, but I'm a father of 2 young kids. So that never happens.
Fair. And you know what else I'll say to your point, Sharky, is that like, bro, you're probably going to be stressed over the weekend, right? Like there's going to be fun. Don't get me wrong. You'll be with your friends, all this stuff, but there are going to be stressful moments, right? Like they're going to be games that you wish that you had opportunities to play over again. There's going to be all these things that are going to hit those stress nerves. Don't let unnecessary stress creep in, right? Like don't get stressed while you're traveling. Don't get stressed or try not to get stressed at work this week. Like just try to have a chill place and save some of your mental bandwidth your emotion for the weekend, because it's gonna happen. That's what it is. You're gonna make a mistake unless you get lucky and you run perfectly. But in a 9
strategies get lucky.
Yeah, in a 9 round event, I think that's how many rounds it is. But it's a long day, especially if you're making day 2. Get that sleep, and hopefully it'll serve you well. Okay, Kyle, we got midday matchup coming up on Friday. Is the plan to do Hoth, or what are we getting going?
Yeah, Battle Hoth comes out Friday, so I'm gonna take a drive over to my local LGS or maybe Walmart early in the morning. If I get my hands on a set to open and play by noon, that's what we're doing. If I can't get my hands on it, it's gonna be Poe Yellow versus something. Just because that's what I've been working on. We haven't played it on stream. We'll have to figure out what the Nerd Slayer is gonna bring against Poe Yellow. Should we not get a Battle of Hoth?
Well, stay tuned for something. That's a great pitch, and yeah, really appreciate everybody hanging out with us over the past couple weeks. Our last video had a lot more views than normal, and we really appreciate the support from everybody here in the community at large. And hopefully you hanging out with us every week helps you learn something, helps you do a little better in the game, because I know sitting here and hanging out, I learned something as well. I uncover biases. For instance, great example, the Talzin deck that we've been working on a little bit, I changed a ton after our podcast last week and made it a little more fast, a little more aggro based, and it's running real smooth. And that gave me a lot of more inspiration for things I might do with this Thrawn deck, because Krennic is there as well. So a lot of good things to be had through conversation like this. So let's start the conversation in the comments below. Let us know what your predictions for Portland are, and wish luck to Sharkey and stuff like that. We'll be back next week talking about at least the recap. Maybe we'll do a guest with Sharky, but we'll figure out the travel schedule. Kyle and I plus somebody else might do something early, and then later when Sharky gets back, do that. I think Kyle would be awesome if we did some prior to us going to Philly, talking about like what we're thinking, and then obviously when we get back from Philly as well. So a lot coming up here on the channel from the Colorado Cantina Crew. Okay, for Kyle, for Sharky, I'm Jordan. Good luck this weekend if you're playing. Good luck, have fun, all that stuff. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.